Wind back the clocks to around 2012 when a new trend in scuba diving is making the rounds and turning things on their side. So I was just a lowly dive master back in those days, I think, and I was basically wowed by this new technical looking way of diving. So I signed up for a course in Sidemount diving. So Sidemount is basically where you attach your cylinders to your harness either side of you with bolt snaps instead of on your back like most scuba divers. So Sidemount diving started in caves, where cave explorers who had been using twinsets found them often too cumbersome to fit through confinements and restricted their movement, so they experimented with mounting their tanks in a more flexible manner. So after generations of cave diver testing and adjustment, a common Sidemount configuration evolved, with a DIR style long hose setup and a unique BCD style specialised side mount. Eventually Sidemount diving would become recreational because it actually has some solid merits to it, and you tend to see the odd Sidemount diver on open water dives now, not so that they can fit through confinements, but for the other benefits of Sidemount diving. So hi, I'm Mark from Simply Scuba, and let's look at why you should dive Sidemount. Yes, the main reason for the creation of Sidemount is to be able to fit through awkward gaps in caves. So each cylinder is clipped onto you by a couple of bolt snaps, one around your shoulder and one on your hip. So if you need to remove a cylinder, you can do it on the fly. If you're making a complicated dive and need multiple gases, you don't have to bring them all with you. You can leave a stage cylinder at a certain point and then connect it to yourself depending on when you need it. So one of the best selling points for me was that you can effectively dive on a twinset, but you never actually have to pick them all up at once. So with Sidemount, you can put your cylinders into the water, clipped off to a line or something, sling on your BCD, etc., and then jump into the water without your cylinders. Great if you have back or leg problems as well. You can leisurely enter the water at your own pace. Swim over to your cylinders and just clip them on at your leisure. So whilst and this is all while your twinset buddy has to summon up the courage and the strength to physically lift with his knees and stand up with steel 12s. So the same with getting out of the water as well. The moment you leave the water after a dive, you're climbing up that ladder, is when you truly understand just how heavy your tanks are. With Sidemount, clip them onto a line and just pull them up later. It's so much easier. As with most of the best scuba diving gear, Sidemount kit is modular. Chop and change what you need and where you need it on the go. Because your cylinders aren't bolted onto your back, you can disconnect a stage tank and leave it somewhere when you're done with it. You can even donate the entire thing to your buddy if they need it, so you're not tethered together by a hose. If they're entangled with something, you can leave it with them whilst you cut them free. If you think about a cross-section of a traditional single-cylinder or twin-cylinder diver, I'll get Sean to put a cartoon graphic up here. So as you can see here, the twinset diver has all of the cylinder weight right at the top of their center of gravity, is really actually quite high up, meaning that they can turn turtle really easily. If we compare these two in the graphic with a side mount, you're pretty flat. Like you have outrigging either side of you. This way, if you roll a little bit onto one side, the weight of this top cylinder right at the top will bring you back down. Once you have your setup just right and you're trimmed down, then you will find it quite hard not to be horizontal in the water. Most side mount rigs are made so that you can place your lead pretty much anywhere you need it to be. If you're in a heads up position, just move your lead up towards your shoulders. Head down, you guessed it, move that lead further down. So once you've spent some time testing and adjusting, you'll be flat as a pancake in the water and nice and streamlined too. With your tanks either side of you and underneath your arms, you're much more streamlined. Especially useful in overhead environments, you won't bump your valves on anything because they're tucked in under your arms. Side mount BCDs tend to be wrap around as well, so they are super streamlined. The body hugging kind of design means there's no flappy snag hazards to slow you down. Going back to our diagrams, your valves on a twinset are here. If something goes wrong on a first stage, you won't be able to see it, and feeling it can be quite tricky, so that's why we practice shutdown drills. On side mount, pretty much everything is right here in front of you, so you can identify the problem and switch to your other tank if you need to whilst you fix the problem. So your hoses are all stuck to the tank as well, so they're all nice, neat and tidy, and your second stage is just either sit around your neck or right next to the valve, so you know for sure which is which and you're not going to be switching to the wrong stage. With single cylinders and to a certain extent twins, you're breathing from a single air source throughout your entire dive. If something goes wrong with your first stage and you're not diving something like a K valve, then that's it. You need to hug your buddy and breathe from their tank. Manifolded twins with an isolated valve can be isolated, but side mount tanks are inherently redundant. If one fails, then you have a complete separate copy on your other side for safety. With side mount, you can have plenty of redundant stage cylinders as well, as many as you can fit on a D-ring really. So side mount is more flexible, it's safer and more convenient. So why don't more divers use this configuration? Well, first off, it's quite complicated compared to a standard recreational setup, and at first it feels like you have hoses and clips all over the place, so it can feel quite imposing at first for a recreational diver. You also need to work on your bolt snap technique, especially if you're on cold water and you're wearing gloves. You also need a specialized BCD for side mount. You can't just clip cylinders to any old BCD and claim to be a side mount diver.
Yeah, you can.
No, you really can't. But what do you guys dive? Do you side mount outside of caves, that is? Should side mount be reserved for cave and wreck penetration, or does it have its place out in open water too? If you want to check out some cool videos about side mount, then check out Steve Martin's channel. No, not that Steve Martin. I don't think he or Martin Short are into side mount diving, but in fact this Steve Martin, he has some cracking videos on side mount, so check out his channel. Let's discuss side mount diving below in the comments. Thank you for watching, and of course, safe diving. As we all know, so scuba was invented by Jacques Cousteau and Émile Gagnan in 1943, and that really changed the world as we know it, and it actually allowed people to breathe underwater. But what most of us don't really know is that rebreathers actually predate open circuit scuba. So a patent application was made in 1878 for a rebreathing